I want to talk a little bit about exactly those people, the ones that I just talked about, which is the people who kept insisting that a Trump victory would worsen the war in Gaza. It would be worse for the people of Gaza, that he would not only encourage or permit, but demand that the Israelis kill even more Palestinians. These were the people who were saying, when you had a lot of Muslim and Arab voters, Muslim voters in Michigan and elsewhere, saying we're not going to vote for Biden or Kamala because of their support for the war in Gaza, or saying they might even vote for Trump, or leftist voters or younger voters saying we're not going to vote for Biden or Kamala because they support the war in Gaza and fund it and will continue to fund it. They were saying, you people are idiots. You think Trump's going to make it any better? He's going to make it worse. I don't know how you could possibly make it worse. There were no limits on the Israelis under Biden. My view has always been, I don't know how many times I've said this, that Trump's greatest asset is his unpredictability. That oftentimes he is willing, singularly, to break the inertia that carries forth U.S. policy. Kamala Harris was the opposite. She was the ultimate status quo perpetuator. I would not have bet that Trump would have done this. I would not have guaranteed it. I would not have told people what would have happened. But I certainly believed that an end to this war was far more likely with a Trump victory than it was with a Kamala victory. And yet you had huge numbers of people aggressively insisting that the only chance for an end to the war in Gaza was with Kamala Harris. Because their narrative about Trump, which has become a religion, doesn't permit them to see any of these things that Trump, just through his way of doing things, has the potential to foster in the world. This instability, this deviation, this breaking of systems. I don't want to exaggerate it. Trump isn't some revolutionary. There's going to be a lot that his administration does in foreign policy and war that I'm going to strongly dislike. That's a continuation of what's been done. But there's going to be a lot that isn't. And this is an example. And yet, let's look at some of the people who were just so self-assured and insisting that the opposite would happen. And many of these people were just craven cynics and partisans who were saying this, not because they believed it, but because they were willing to say and do anything to make sure that as many people as possible voted for the Democratic candidate. Here was the New York Times on November 7th, just less than a week after Trump won. Here's what they said. Trump's win is likely to prolong the Gaza talks uncertainty. And the whole article describes how now that Donald Trump won, it's essentially impossible for there to be any peace deal before his inauguration, that he would complicate everything, that he would give the Israelis the green light, that the war would continue now that he won. Of course, it turned out to be exactly the opposite. In April of 2024, Newsweek published a headline that summarized what they called an ex-Trump aide, who's actually a host of The View. And she said Trump would, quote, level Gaza without a thought, she warns. Mehdi Hasan, my former colleague at The Intercept, who was driven out of MSNBC recently, was probably the person most assertive in spitting rage and contempt at anybody who said, I'm considering not voting for Biden, and then I'm considering not voting for Kamala Harris because of my anger at Gaza. He would tell them all, are you people so stupid? Don't you see how refraining from voting Democrat because of Gaza is the dumbest thing you could possibly do, because Trump's going to make the violence against Gazans so much worse? There's zero chance with Trump to get a deal, but at least there's some chance with Kamala Harris. Everything that turned out to be completely wrong. And of course, after having done that, he's now trying to pretend that he was the one who knew all along that this was going to happen. Here is what he had the audacity to go post so shamelessly. And if you're on Twitter, I really encourage you to find this tweet and look at the responses and the quote tweets, because all it is people telling him what an absolute liar and fraud he is, pretending that he knew this was going to happen when he was probably the leading voice saying, you have to vote for Kamala Harris, you have to vote for Joe Biden, even if Gaza is your best issue, is your most important issue, because Trump will destroy Gaza and only the Democrats will have any chance to save it. Here's what he posted, quote, some of us said a year ago that the U.S. president has the power to impose a deal and a ceasefire on Netanyahu and Israel. If President-elect Trump can do it, Biden could have done it for the past year. Shame on him and Blinken and the rest of the team. That's true, but he neglects to mention that he spent the entire year telling everybody that there was zero chance that Trump would do it, that the only chance for it to be done is under Biden and Harris. Back in October, obviously a couple weeks before the election, he went onto Twitter and he said, quote, "For anyone who doubts Trump will be even worse than Biden is on Gaza, even worse than Biden is on Gaza, here's Trump saying, quote, Netanyahu is doing a good job. Biden is trying to hold him back and probably should be doing the opposite. I'm glad that Bibi decided to do what he had to do." Here was Mehdi on October 24th, getting closer to the election, getting more and more desperate to make sure people vote for Democrats, saying, quote, "Not sure who is making the arguments that, quote, 4 more years of this will fix things." He's responding to a tweet. I don't know if we have it. We don't. Basically, from someone saying to him, "You keep telling us to vote for Democrats, even if our main issue is Gaza, but we've seen the Democrats preside over 15 months of unrestrained destruction of Gaza without doing anything to stop it. How can you possibly think that 4 more years of the same people will fix this?" And in response, this is what Mehdi wrote, quote, "Not sure who is making the argument that, quote, 4 more years of this will fix things. Instead, the argument being made by AOC, by Ilyan, by Bernie, and others on the left is that we have a, quote, tiny chance of ending this under one candidate and zero chance under ending it, zero chance under the other. That's the argument." Now, it turns out that Mehdi was right, technically, about what he said. There was zero chance of ending the war in Gaza with one candidate, and there was some chance of ending it with the other. It's just the opposite of what he tried to convey. There was zero chance of this war ending if Kamala Harris got elected. And at least there was some chance if Trump won. And in fact, Trump ended the war before he even took office. Here is Bernie Sanders, all these people using their credibility as Israel critics, even though Bernie, for the first 2 or 3 months of the war, when it actually mattered, kept opposing a ceasefire, saying that it would help Hamas. He got public praise from AIPAC for doing that, but eventually he said the things that he needed to say to keep credibility with the left. But he spent all of 2024 saying that even if Gaza is your main issue, you still have to vote for Biden and Harris because Trump's worse on everything. Here's what he told Jake Tapper in August of last year.
"We know the election is going to be very, very close. Michigan has a large Arab American and Muslim American population that traditionally votes Democrat. But there's a lot of concern among Democrats that a lot of those voters are either going to go to third party or not going to vote at all in protest of the Biden-Harris support for Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel. What do you say to those voters who are thinking about sitting out this election or voting third party or maybe even voting for Donald Trump because they disapprove of Netanyahu and Biden-Harris's support for Netanyahu?
Well, what I say in my own view is, as I'm sure you know, I happen to believe that Hamas is a terrible terrorist organization that attacked Israel on October 7th. Israel had a right to respond. But it did not have the right to go to war against the entire Palestinian people, kill 42,000, injure 100,000, and destroy almost all of Gaza. That they don't have a right to do. And I will be leading the effort to make sure that we do not provide more offensive military aid to Israel. But to those people who are saying, well, I can't support Harris because she disagrees, Trump on that issue, even on that issue, is worse. He will be closer to Netanyahu. So if we are able to elect Harris, I think we're going to have an opportunity to move her on that issue, to make it clear we cannot allow children in Gaza to starve to death. She will be open to that. I doubt that Trump will. We can't even get Republican support in the Senate for humanitarian aid to feed starving children. You really want to vote for a Trump who holds that view? I would hope not.
All right, maybe he was being sincere about that. I can't imagine anybody who's been around Washington for as long as he has, or even for about a week, believing that Kamala Harris is going to get into office and stand up to Netanyahu. There's absolutely nothing in her career or character that suggests she would ever remotely consider doing that. Everything suggests exactly the opposite. But that was the pitch Bernie was making. That, oh, Trump's going to be way worse. All right, so maybe he was just wrong in good faith. And now we have Trump actually getting into office before he's even in office, getting a deal done to end the hostilities in Gaza, at least for now. And then Bernie goes on to Twitter earlier today to talk about it without even an iota of accountability or regret for how wrong he was. At best, how wrong he was. I think he knew he was lying and was saying it on purpose because he was desperate for Trump to lose the election. But even if you give him the benefit of the doubt, he was trying to be authentic. He was absolutely, completely wrong in everything he said so assuredly. You would think he would acknowledge that, having just seen what he said. Instead, he just went onto Twitter and posted this, quote, "A ceasefire hostage deal in Gaza has been reached. This is welcome, long overdue news. Both sides must honor it. The killing must stop. The hostages must be released. The UN must be allowed to provide humanitarian aid. There must be accountability for war crimes by both sides." Not even a, hey, by the way, I know I told you this wouldn't happen if Trump won, and in fact it happened because Trump won. I guess I was wrong. None of that. There is evidence that suggests that drinking 2 to 3 cups in the morning of coffee could slash your risk of death by 29% and cut your chances of heart complications by nearly half. But that's not the only benefit you get from drinking your coffee. Coffee can also be helpful in fighting censorship while tasting excellent. That's why I've always been proud to have 1775 coffee as a supporter of our show. This isn't just coffee. It's like a rebellion in every cup, in every sip. It's handpicked at high altitudes and sourced from single origin farms. 1775 coffee delivers bold flavor and real benefits that Starbucks crappy sugar company can't touch. Boost your metabolism, protect your heart, and stay sharper than a debate on free speech. Whether it's beans, grounds, or pods, every sip of 1775 coffee takes a stand against a sugar-packed mediocrity. Head to 1775coffee.com. Use the promo code Glenn for 15% off and improve your mornings with coffee that fuels bold flavor, uncompromising quality, and helps Rumble in the free speech fight that it stands for every day. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.